The night before confessing to Pei-ki, he became my stepbrother. He despised my mother and, by extension, hated me, yet he tried every way to keep me close. After my mother passed away, I left without a word, going abroad and cutting all ties with him. 3 years later, Pei-ki was about to get married, and as his stepsister, I was invited back to the country. He cornered me in an empty fitting room, kissing me fiercely. Running away without a word, you've gotten smarter now. He doesn't know. This time I came back because I don't have much time left. Chapter 1. Pei-ki's wedding was approaching. As soon as I got off the plane, his assistant took me to a bridal shop. Mr. Pei said you haven't met Miss Duan in the 3 years you've been abroad. Today, while choosing a wedding dress, he wants you to get acquainted with your future sister-in-law. Miss Duan was his fiancée. I sat silently in the back seat of the Bentley, nodding. When I arrived, Pei-ki was sitting in the lobby, chatting with a few friends. His aura seemed even colder, his brows slightly furrowed, but his gaze towards the woman beside him was full of affection. They were a perfect match, talented man and beautiful woman. Are you Zhu too? My hand paused as I pushed open the glass door. The woman not far away lifted her skirt and ran over. I'm Duan Shiyi. Aki has mentioned you many times, and I'm finally meeting you today. Living alone abroad for so many years must have been tough. She extended her hand, her eyes sincere. I was stunned for a moment before Pei-ki walked over with large strides. His gaze lingered on me for a few seconds before quickly shifting away. He lowered his head to adjust Duan Shiyi's skirt, his tone indulgent. Be careful running so fast, you might trip. I opened my mouth, my voice hoarse. Brother. Miss Duan. Pei-ki responded softly, his eyes indifferent. Shiyi, now that everyone is here, you go try on the wedding dress you picked. Zhu too has good taste, let her give you some advice. Duan Shiyi smiled and agreed. As she turned, the smile on Pei-ki's face disappeared instantly. He grabbed my wrist and pulled me upstairs. I had to follow him, stumbling, my breathing unsteady. With a swish, the white curtains closed in front of me. I was cornered against the wall, unable to move. Pei-ki's gaze fell on my lips, scorching. He lowered his head, biting hard. His hand pressed against my waist, the heat radiating through the thin fabric, almost melting me. My mind went blank. Terrified, I widened my eyes, instinctively raising my hand. The hardest slap landed on his face. The air was silent for a moment. He covered the red mark on his face and sneered. Running away without a word, you've gotten smarter now. I took a step back, my tone icy. Pei-ki, you've crossed the line. Chapter 2. As we went downstairs, I discreetly put some distance between Pei-ki and myself. Duan Shiyi seemed to have been waiting downstairs for a long time. For some reason, I felt a hint of pity in her gaze. Aki, what happened to your face? She pulled Pei-ki to her side, worried. Just now, while discussing family matters with Zhu Tu upstairs, her bag accidentally hit my face. It's no big deal. His expression was calm, showing no hint of the truth. What about the wedding dress? Why haven't you put it on? I just realized my period started while I was in the fitting room. I was worried about staining the dress, so I didn't put it on. Zhu Tu's figure is quite similar to mine, maybe she can try it on for me? Her suggestion drew everyone's attention to me. I stood there, at a loss. Only when Duan Shiyi looked at me expectantly did I stiffly nod. Throughout, Pei-ki remained silent, his lips pressed together. In the fitting room, the staff carefully tied the wedding dress but gasped in surprise as they saw the bruises on my waist and abdomen. Wow, how did you get so many scars? I got hurt while practicing dance. I raised my hand to cover the largest scar. They smiled playfully, clearly misunderstanding something. Miss Zhu, you have the perfect figure for a wedding dress. I wonder which lucky man will marry you in the future. Me? My eyelids trembled, and I looked at myself in the mirror. The skirt swayed, cascading down gracefully, very different from my usual style. One glance was enough to captivate. But I wouldn't have such an opportunity again. Before returning to the country, the doctor had said, I would only live until this winter. Chapter 3. When I went out, Pei-Ki was lounging on the sofa, a cigarette between his fingers. The smoke swirled around him, and his eyes seemed to brighten when he saw me. In high school, he used to complain about hating the smell of cigarettes, but now he was inseparable from smoking and drinking. I lowered my eyes slowly, a pang of sadness in my heart. Duan Shiyi greeted me with delight, her eyebrows arched. She circled me admiringly. Aki, this wedding dress is really beautiful. Why don't we choose this one? No. Pei-Ki's response was almost immediate. His resolute tone drew everyone's attention. I fell silent. But I still helped smooth things over. Miss Duan, you should try the wedding dress yourself to see if it fits. It's not good to decide hastily. Under everyone's puzzled gaze, Pei-Ki extinguished his cigarette. His lips curled slightly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. The daughter of a mistress wearing this wedding dress is bad luck. Pei-Ki wasn't wrong. My mother was indeed the other woman. During the time when Aunt Pei was gravely ill, she rose from being a nanny and drove Aunt Pei to death. The day Aunt Pei died, it was pouring rain. Pei-Ki knelt numbly in front of the white cloth, but when he saw me, his voice rose sharply. His usually gentle eyes were bloodshot, glaring at me with hatred. Zhu Tu, you and your mother disgust me. Get out. The rain pattered outside, and I twisted my fingers helplessly, with the love letter I had written the night before still hidden in my sleeve. Large tears streamed down, but I had no words. Pei-Ki's personality changed drastically from that day forward. The gentle, polite boy in my memory gradually faded away. Pei-Ki became unruly. He would secretly find my love letters and read them aloud with malicious intent during class meetings. Zhu Tu, how disgusting you are, to like your stepbrother. He would also throw wads of cash at me when paying school fees, mocking. Zhu Tu, you're just like your mother, a gold digger. Pei-Ki hated me, and I never defended myself. Until my mother and I were diagnosed with the same rare, low survival disease. I suddenly realized. The world's retribution never stops. Whatever heaven wants me to endure, I'll endure. I'm just a little sad. The boy who would quietly sing in my ear when I fell asleep. I'll never see him again. Chapter 4. In the end, the wedding dress wasn't decided. As we left, dark clouds gathered, and it started to drizzle. Each drop hit my heart. Duan Shiyi insisted on giving me a ride. After my mother passed away, I had no connection with the Pei family. Reasonably, I didn't want to go back there. I smiled and declined. No need, thank you, Miss Duan. My boyfriend will be here soon. She raised her eyebrows in surprise. You're in a relationship? Aki never told me. Did you meet him abroad? I thought for a moment, then nodded, acknowledging it. Pei-Ki's face darkened instantly. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white. Inhaling deeply, he accidentally hit a button. A sharp horn blared. He seemed to snap back to reality, his voice hoarse. That's good. Then he closed the window and drove away. The speeding car splashed muddy water, leaving spots on my white dress. My head throbbed painfully. It felt like someone was slowly slicing my temples with a knife. I squatted down where I stood. The night was ink black. Just like my equally dark future. Chapter 5. Back at my rented apartment, I took painkillers and quickly fell asleep. In the long night, I dreamed of my mother again. I dreamt of arranging her funeral alone. By then, her relationship with Uncle Pei had already broken down, and she had distanced herself from others, so no one attended the funeral. I guarded the mourning hall alone for 5 days. I ate and slept there, crying until my eyes hurt, unable to distinguish between black and white. On the 5th day, Pei-Ki appeared. He was followed by a group of men. The strong men wielded sticks, turning the mourning hall into ruins in an instant. A scene of devastation. I sat quietly, watching my mother's portrait shatter into pieces, saying nothing. Pei-Ki rarely wore such bright colors. He squatted in front of me, laughing until he was out of breath, even shedding a few tears. He grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. Zoo 2, do you know? I haven't been this happy in a long time. Are you happy? I didn't resist saying. As long as you're happy. The man's face twisted, turning into countless sharp blades. They stabbed at me. When I woke up from the nightmare, my phone was ringing. It was an unfamiliar number from another city. As soon as I answered, I was met with vile curses. You're sick for liking your brother, aren't you? Read too many novels and think you're a protagonist in a forbidden romance story. Pei-Ki must be ashamed to have a sister like you. His performance has been slipping because of you, you bitch. Before I could respond, the call was disconnected, leaving only a series of beeps. I numbly opened Weibo and saw that at midnight, Pei-Ki and Duan Shi had announced their engagement. The hot esports player and the gentle rich girl. Even I had to admit they were a good match. The comment section was full of blessings. Even fanfiction of their relationship had already come out. Clearly, none of this involved me. I scrolled down and found a video posted by an amateur a few hours ago. It was from high school when Pei-Ki read my love letter in front of the class. The video was blurry, but Pei-Ki's mocking voice was clear. Word by word, it was proof of my teenage crush. Coupled with a photo of me in a wedding dress that had somehow leaked. It was clear to everyone that I was infatuated with my stepbrother. Undeniable. Strangers' messages flooded my phone, so I had to remove the SIM card. The sky was lightning. I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding like thunder, unable to calm down. My head throbbed painfully, and I screamed into my hands, asking why my mother didn't take me with her. There was no response. I grabbed a bottle of painkillers and poured them into my mouth. As my consciousness blurred, the wooden door of the small room seemed to be kicked open. Blinding light streamed in. I turned my head in confusion. But I could only see a tall figure hidden in the shadows. Chapter 6. After setting a scheduled post on Weibo, Pei-Ki went to bed early. The marriage was a result of negotiations between the two families, and he wasn't looking forward to it. Nor did he care about the netizens' reactions. Besides, the Pei family and the club's PR department were handling it. He slept uneasily. His assistant woke him, hesitating. Mr. Pei, someone took advantage of the situation and posted a video attacking Miss Zhu. Some netizens are doxing her maliciously. Pei-Ki's vision darkened. He recognized the angle immediately. After instructing his assistant, he tried to contact Zhu too. Dozens of calls went unanswered. For some reason, he felt deeply uneasy. He grabbed his coat and was about to leave but stopped abruptly. Zhu too had just returned to the country, and he didn't know where she lived. By the time his assistant used all connections to find her address, it was already bright. Pei-Ki rushed to the location. The car stopped in front of a U-shaped apartment building, densely packed, blocking even the few rays of morning light. The smell of mildew was overwhelming as he navigated the slippery stairs. He bumped into a man slowly descending. The woman in the man's arms was pale, her arms hanging limply, with blood dripping from her wrist. His heart tightened. Chapter 7. I didn't know how I got to the hospital. When I woke up, my whole body felt like it had been beaten, the pain piercing my bones. Don't move, your wound isn't bandaged yet. A deep voice filled my ears. I looked up and saw a familiar face. Chi Yi-Hui was sitting by my bed, wrapping bandages around my wrist. I couldn't help but speak, my voice choked. Thank you, Chi Yi-Hui. He didn't look up, his tone indifferent. We both get what we need, no need for thanks. Besides, you're a patient. I can't just let you die. After 3 years together, I was used to his temperament and chuckled lightly. You shouldn't have saved me. If I had died last night, it would have saved you a lot of medical expenses. I wasn't lying. From the day I was diagnosed, my future was destined to be spent with cold medical instruments. Endless medication and tests. In the early stages, I had the energy to work hard abroad to pay for my treatment. But as time passed, the physical and mental suffering had worn me down. Even after meeting Chi Yi Hui, who offered to cover my medical expenses, I no longer had the strength to fight the illness. He saw my suffering. "Do you really not want to live?" He gazed at me for a long time, his breath light. The bandage on my wrist tightened. I nodded, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. "Yes. It's very painful." The hospital room door suddenly opened. Pei Qi strode in, a few drops of sweat on his forehead. Several black-suited bodyguards followed him, bowing. "Mr. Qi, sorry, we couldn't stop him." Chi Yi Hui's expression froze. He glanced at Pei Qi's hand resting on my wrist, his eyes darkening. Pei Qi took a step forward, grabbing Chi Yi Hui's collar. His anger almost tangible. He warned viciously, "Stay the hell away from Zhu 2. Chapter 8. Chi Yi Hui stepped back, putting some distance between himself and Pei Qi, then he calmly punched Pei Qi in the face. He slowly flexed his wrist, his expression unchanged. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Zhu 2's boyfriend, Chi Yi Hui." Blood immediately seeped from Pei Qi's mouth, but he ignored it. His gaze shifted between me and Chi Yi Hui, his cheek swelling. He laughed in disbelief. "You went abroad for 3 years to be with a man like this? Zhu 2, you've really grown some wings." I nodded stiffly. "Yi Hui and I love each other. Why can't we be together?" Pei Qi's smile vanished, his nose twitching with each breath. He pointed at me, his voice raw. "What's so good about him that you're so devoted?" I thought for a moment. My tone serious. "I need money. A lot of money. Can you give it to me?" Pei Qi hated it when I mentioned money. After my mother died, I wanted to leave the country but couldn't afford the plane ticket. I borrowed money from him for the first time. 35,000 was nothing to a wealthy man like him. But he still grabbed my face, mocking. "Zhu 2, take this money and disappear. Don't let me see you again." I picked up the scattered bills obediently. And disappeared for 3 years. If it weren't for my limited time, I wouldn't have come back to this sad place. These words I couldn't say. "Zhu 2, you have guts." Pei Qi gritted his teeth, punching the bed, his eyes red. He left angrily. After leaving the hospital, I didn't see Pei Qi for a long time. Occasionally I heard about him from the news. I heard his wedding plans with Duan Shi were going smoothly. I heard he led his team to the finals in the autumn tournament. His future was bright. A perfection I couldn't even dream of. But it seemed my words had provoked him. Large sums of money often appeared in my bank account, the sender's note a single character, key. I calmly returned it, and he stubbornly sent it again. This childish game seemed to amuse him. Chapter 9. The wedding invitation was delivered by Duan Shi herself. The small room was so cramped it could only fit a bed and a desk. Mold spots covered the walls. She calmly moved a wooden chair, sat down, and didn't seem awkward. "Zhu 2, long time no see." She smiled. The contrast between her gentle demeanor and the dilapidated surroundings was stark. It was clear she had grown up surrounded by wealth and love. My throat felt bitter. I looked away, reaching for the invitation she handed me. My sleeve was pulled up, revealing the increasing scars on my arm. Dark purple, shocking. In the dead silence, the air seemed suffocatingly thin. I clutched the gilt-edged paper. Even my fingertips felt hot. Duan Shi was stunned for a moment. Then she carefully pulled down my sleeve, smoothing it until no trace was visible. Her voice was low. "Does it hurt?" "Pei Qi, he..." She hesitated for a long time but swallowed the rest of her words. That day, Duan Shi talked with me for a long time. From the first time she saw my photo on Pei Qi's desk, feeling a sense of familiarity, to how Pei Qi was always cold but would smile when mentioning my name. Finally, as she was about to leave, she hugged me. Her tone was earnest. "Take care." Chapter 10. On the day of the wedding. The clinking of glasses and the presence of Beijing's elite filled the venue. Rose petals flown in overnight from Ecuador carpeted the ground. Chi Yi Hui accompanied me as we sat in the front row, the scent of flowers overwhelming. Pei Qi stood at the end of the flower aisle, waiting for his bride. The black suit accentuated his tall figure, his face seemingly covered in frost. I looked up at the stage, only seeing his tightly clenched jawline. And now, let's welcome today's leading lady, Miss Duan Shi. The melodious piano music began. Though it was the most exciting moment, I felt inexplicably uneasy. With a loud boom, the mahogany doors swung open. The train of her fishtail dress had been cut to her waist, revealing inappropriate jeans. To everyone's shock, Duan Shi ran toward me. She handed me the lily of the valley bouquet, her expression solemn. Before anyone could react, she turned and left. She was gone in a flash. In the midst of the chaos, Duan Shi had eloped. In the dressing room, she left me a gift. It was the wedding dress I had tried on. The handwriting on the small card was delicate. She told me, "I've been the gentle lady for over 20 years. I need to live for myself once. Zhu too, I hope you do too." I felt a ringing in my ears as Chi Yi Hui sat me down, holding my waist. Pei Qi's pupils contracted as he noticed our intimate posture. His chest heaved, his voice hoarse. Shi's ex-boyfriend was a narcotics officer. Their families forced them apart, and the next day, he was tragically killed. No one knows the true cause of his death. Years have passed, but she still can't let go. This absurd marriage, she didn't like me, and I had no interest in her. Now that she can stay true to herself, I'm happy for her. Having experienced my own pain, I wanted to shelter others from the rain. So despite our brief acquaintance, she looked at me with pity. Pei Qi leaned against the floor-to-ceiling window, continuing to speak. He was telling someone else's story. Yet it seemed like he was looking through that story at himself. That wedding dress. I really like that wedding dress. I interrupted him with a smile. Yi Hui, how about we wear it for our wedding? It's Miss Duan's kind gesture. The air was thick with tension. Chi Yi Hui quickly responded. Of course, that dress suits you perfectly. I love it. Pei Qi stood frozen, blinking hard. When he spoke again, his voice trembled. Are you marrying him? We set the date before returning home. I smiled bashfully. Pei Qi, please make time to come. We've known each other for years, and I want you there on such an important day. Chapter 11. You didn't have to lie. He looked genuinely hurt when he left. Chi Yi Hui sighed, gripping the steering wheel. I didn't lie. I'm just fooling myself. I owe Pei Qi a debt that I can't repay in this lifetime. Further entanglement will only lead to more consequences. So, when is the wedding? I replied nonchalantly. I won't live until then. I had long suspected the severity of my illness over these past months. The increasingly loose waistband and the excruciating pain at night clearly and cruelly stated the truth. My mother and I would soon reunite. The air grew heavy. I coughed lightly, trying to lighten the mood. Although we are only partners, I can't let you become a divorce because of me, right? One shouldn't be too selfish. You know I didn't mean that. Chi Yi Hui quickly explained. I didn't respond. The light and shadows outside the window flickered as I silently picked up my phone. The public opinion had been fermenting for an entire day. With the marriage annulled, the stock prices of the Pei and Duan families' companies plummeted to rock bottom. Rival companies who had long been eyeing the Pei family took the opportunity to slander Pei Qi overnight. Under the copy-pasted smear articles were the same videos. The background was a small bamboo grove in high school. Pei Qi, wearing his school uniform, had his legs wide open, straddling a boy. His fists flew. Each punch seemed to hit flesh. Those narrow eyes were blood red, as if he could eat someone alive. I turned off my phone, unable to calm down. Can you accompany me to school tomorrow? Chapter 12. I had never seen that video before. But I was very familiar with the protagonist. Zhou Cheng's name had haunted my dreams, tormenting me with sleepless nights. The Pei family was big and influential, and Pei Qi naturally had many followers, though he usually ignored them. After Aunt Pei passed away, Pei Qi's personality changed drastically, and he began tormenting me at school. Seeing Pei Qi's cold treatment of me, his lackeys also started tormenting me, trying to curry favor. Milk mixed with yellow urine on my desk, shredded gym clothes in my locker. I couldn't guard against it all. Zhou Cheng was the worst of them. He often cornered me in deserted alleys, forcing me to be his girlfriend. I always refused coldly. Enraged, he would grab my hair and shout, "Bitch, do you really think you're some pure virgin? Pei Qi doesn't care about you anymore. You're just a worthless child born to a poor nanny, understand?" Fortunately, this nightmare only lasted for less than half a month. One morning, Zhou Cheng was expelled for violating school rules. I never thought much about the details. The images from the video flashed before my eyes. I clenched my hands, my mind swirling with absurd guesses. Chapter 13. The fourth time Zhou Cheng cornered me was actually orchestrated by me. I was tormented to the point of mental exhaustion, desperate for help. I needed evidence. So I deliberately provoked him, setting up a camera in a hidden corner of the alley. Sure enough, Zhou Cheng took the bait. I curled up on the ground, being beaten by Zhou Cheng, with the whole process recorded. I eagerly took it to the class teacher. But all I got was a dismissive response. "If you hadn't seduced Zhou Cheng, he wouldn't want to date you. This is your own fault." I was heartbroken. The wound on my head was still bleeding, but I didn't seem to feel the pain. Numbly, I pulled out the memory card from the CD player and buried it under the willow tree by the school pond. The past was too painful to remember. I squatted on the ground, sobbing. The iron shovel was taken from my hands, and Chi Yi Hui, pursing his lips, said softly, "Let me do it." The carved wooden box was unearthed. Inside, besides the memory card, was a yellowed bracelet. My breath caught. For Pei Qi's 17th birthday, I received a woven bracelet. He made it himself. Even though it was his birthday, I was the one who received the gift. I asked him why. He looked calm, but his ears turned red. "On your birthday, the birthday person is blessed by God, and the person who receives the gift will be infinitely lucky." During that time, I often saw the Pei family's young master, who had never touched a needle before, hiding in his room. I could hear his frustrated sighs from inside. Why is this so hard to untangle?" So that's why. Seeing the needle marks on his hands, I couldn't help but laugh. "In that case, I'll grant you 3 wishes this year." Pei Qi pursed his lips, thinking carefully. "My first birthday wish is for Zhu 2 to stop being at the bottom of the class in the midterm exams. My second wish is for Zhu 2 to stop tripping over nothing. I haven't thought of the third wish yet. I'll save it for later." At that time, he was full of sincerity. Every birthday wish was about me. Chapter 14. Public opinion was escalating. The Pei Qi school bullying hashtag repeatedly topped the trending list. As the most popular newcomer in the esports circle, Pei Qi's popularity and commercial value were on the rise. Now, with such negative news, the internet was full of criticism. Fans demanded an explanation from Pei Qi, but he remained silent. I had to do something. With that in mind, I turned on my computer. I edited the video into a compilation. From verbal threats to physical abuse, I detailed every incident involving Zhou Cheng. In the end, those painful past events were condensed into a 30-minute video. Every frame made my heart race. The autumn wind rustled, sweeping up fallen leaves. I sat in a cafe, importing the final segment. My phone suddenly rang. Answering the call, Pei Qi said nothing about the online rumors. "Zhu 2, I've thought of my last birthday wish." The static buzzed in my ears. I paused before speaking hoarsely. "What is it?" There was a moment of silence. Pei Qi's voice came clearly through the phone. "The final match is in 3 days. I want Zhu 2 to be there. Consider it me paying for 1 day of your time, okay?" I hung up the phone. Pressed send. Chapter 15. Years ago, Pei-Ki protected me. Years later, I spoke up for Pei-Ki. It was like completing a cycle. As soon as the video was posted, it caused an uproar online. Zhou Cheng's true nature was exposed, and a flood of online judges demanded answers from him. Some even tracked down his address, threatening to confront him in person. Under the pressure of public opinion, Zhou Cheng immediately issued a lengthy apology statement, thousands of words long. The dirt thrown at Pei-Ki was finally washed away. Forced to be a substitute due to negative news, Pei-Ki could now return to the spotlight, reclaiming his rightful place. The night before the final, I asked Qi Yi Hui for a hefty dose of painkillers. These days, the excruciating pain was driving me mad. Regular treatments no longer worked. I had to take painkillers like food. A handful wasn't enough, so I took a whole scoop. Countless sleepless nights, I curled up alone, my hands and feet cold. I could clearly feel my absurd life was coming to an end. Chapter 16. On the day of the finals. Under the changing spotlights, the venue was packed. I sat in the closest seat to the stage. With a slight tilt of my head, I could see Pei-Ki sitting in the gaming chair, headphones on, focused on the screen. I didn't play games or follow esports, nor did I understand the fans' exclamations at the godly plays. I just sat there, feeling suffocated. My chest felt stuffed with cotton, making it hard to breathe. The discomfort in my abdomen intensified. I fumbled for the bottle of pills and poured them into my mouth. Suddenly, the arena erupted in cheers. Ah! Pei-Ki is the MVP! We're the champions! Everyone is amazing! The cheers were deafening. Amidst the flashing lights, Pei-Ki didn't step forward to embrace his teammates. He stood in the golden rain, slowly rising, looking at me through the crowd. His brows furrowed, his eyes filled with disbelief. I bent over. Blood gushed from my mouth. I seemed to fall into a long dream. In the dream, Pei-Ki watched as I was wheeled into the ICU, repeatedly calling my name. No response. The smell of disinfectant was overwhelming, and the beeping of medical equipment was maddening. I reached out to turn it off but couldn't move. Outside the ward, Pei-Ki, still in his team uniform, was fighting with Qi Yi Hui, quickly pulled apart by onlookers. He kicked over a nearby trash can, shouting hoarsely, "Zhu 2 was with you for 3 years, is this how you took care of her? Why didn't you tell me she was sick? Qi Yi Hui, what are you up to?" Pei-Ki hit hard, and Qi Yi Hui's face was soon bruised. He didn't get angry. Touching his wounds, he smirked silently. This only further enraged Pei-Ki. His chest heaved, and he broke free from the restraining hands, ready to punch again. Everyone tried to stop him. In the chaos, Qi Yi Hui spoke coldly. "Didn't you know Zhu 2's mother's disease is 100% hereditary? Where were you back then? Now you're pretending to be all loving?" Pei-Ki froze. He turned stiffly, staring at me through the glass. His eyes filled with blood, he covered his face and fell to the ground. In the end, tears seeped through his fingers as he muttered tearfully, "It's my fault. I ruined her." Chapter 17. When I woke up, Pei-Ki and Qi Yi Hui were both by my side. Qi Yi Hui occupied the chair by the bed, while Pei-Ki sat cross-legged against the wall, tears still in his eyes. The life monitor beeped urgently. Pei-Ki's eyes shot open, and he rushed to hold my hand. "Zhu 2, you're awake? Are you thirsty? Tell me if you feel uncomfortable anywhere. I've arranged with a medical team abroad. Once your vitals stabilize, I'll fly you there for treatment. I won't compete anymore, I won't do anything. I'll just stay with you, no matter the cost. Pei-Ki, have you forgotten my mother?" I interrupted him softly. He froze, his eyes unfocused. He seemed to remember that day too. Before my mother died, she suddenly vomited blood during a meal and was rushed to the hospital, never waking up again. Outside the morgue, Pei-Ki pointed at me, laughing. He said, "Zhu 2, you'll only be fair if you're 100 times more miserable than me." Every word was a dagger, and I remembered it all. His palm was hot, and I quietly pulled my hand away, my voice hoarse. I don't want to see you. Leave. After he left, Hui took a letter from the drawer. It's from Miss Duan. He handed it to me. The handwriting was still delicate, but now more free-spirited. She told me that life teaching in the mountains, though tough, was inspiring. Behind the thin letter were a few photos. In them, she smiled, her eyes sparkling like clear water. One look, and you could feel the vibrant life force growing strongly. Finally, she said. She hoped I could live well. Chapter 18. The bench outside the ward became Pei Qi's exclusive seat. I refused to see him, so he stayed there day and night. Every time I woke up, he rushed into the ward. Hui would always get bumped aside. I glared at him, and he would obediently retreat. He looked pitiful, like a puppy that had done something wrong. After half a month in the hospital, even though I was the one who was sick, his condition was worse than mine. His short hair was messy, his beard unkempt, and dark circles under his eyes. An image of despair I had never seen before. A netizen posted a photo of him online, mocking him. Pei Xiao is too self-destructive. Winning the championship means nothing. The person he likes doesn't want him anymore, so why regret it now? Serves him right. That day, Pei Qi stared at his phone screen for a long time. The usually hot-tempered boy's eyes reddened instantly. He typed for a while before finally replying. Yeah, I deserve it. But Zhu too will live well. This year's first snow came early. After the snow, the sky was clear. The snowflakes created a white curtain, making the ward bright. I struggled to get up, feeling much better. My mind was no longer foggy, and my legs had some strength. It was probably my final burst of energy. I thought. Pei Qi fed me water with a small spoon. For once, I showed him a good face. Pei Qi, it's snowing. They say the first snow at Lingyan Temple outside the city is the best time to make a wish. I took out a jade token with a name engraved on it and handed it to him. The jade token was a gift from Aunt Pei when I started high school. Pei Qi and I each had one. The notches matched perfectly, making a pair. Both tokens had been blessed by a high monk, wishing us peace and safety. I always kept it close. Until Aunt Pei died, Pei Qi angrily smashed the token, breaking it in half. I secretly sought out many renowned jade craftsmen, but none could repair it. Pei Qi looked at the token and immediately understood my meaning. He grabbed my hand, his eyes fierce, like winter snow melting in his gaze. He instructed. Wait for me. Pei Qi appeared on local TV. The mountains were towering, the snow patchy. Pei Qi stood at the end of the long steps. He bowed every 3 steps, did a full kowtow every 9 steps, his face full of devotion. Snowflakes fell on his shoulders. He didn't waver. By the time he reached the top of Lingyan Temple, it was dusk. In front of the red-walled, green-tiled temple was a sacred tree, said to grant wishes. It was covered in red prayer plaques, bending under their weight. Pei Qi carefully found a spot. He tied the 2 jade tokens tightly to the tree, making sure they wouldn't fall before slowly turning. He looked at the camera, silently praying. Just like that midsummer. The cicadas chirped, and I was drowsy from plum wine, napping on my desk. Pei Qi leaned close to my ear, singing softly. And I was his only audience.